Welcome to Spaces Between, a podcast about bringing gamers closer together. I'm your host, Roy Caney, and with me today I have a very special guest, Melissa Makak. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going, Roy? Thank you so much for letting me do this with you.
Yeah, it's super awesome. So Melissa, if anybody doesn't know, you've done a bunch of things on Board Game Breakfast, but then you started a new series called Teach the Teach, where you go through and teach people how to play board games.
Right. Well, I teach them how to teach board games.
Oh, exactly. Teach them how to teach board games, which is a cool concept.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because at first, I think people were getting confused. I was getting some comments because they thought that I was doing like a how to play video. Right. But then I started in my intro now saying like, this is a Teach the Teach, where I teach you how to teach a board game, to make sure, that's all cleared up. But yeah, I spoke to Tom at PAX Unplugged. He said if I had any sort of ideas to let him know. A couple days later, I was like, what about this? And he said, yeah, let's go for it. So I've been doing that and I've been enjoying it.
So you basically give people like tips of like a way to approach how to show the game to other people.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm always trying, I say it in my videos, I'm always trying to think of ways of how to get players playing as quickly as possible. That's what I did anyway before making videos, so I was always trying to think about that because I have a bunch of people in my group who just want to get to playing. So,
oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people are that way. So I find it like a puzzle. So I like to think about it and think of ways, okay, how can I get out the information and get people playing without bogging them down with a whole bunch of rules. So sure. I thought, well, let's make a video out of it because I don't think I'm that terrible at it. So
do you have like a universal like start point that you use for most games, or is it different, very different depending on the game?
As I say in most of my videos, I always start off with like, what's the story behind the game, to get people into the mood, into the atmosphere of the game. I like doing that. I like getting people excited to play the game. And then I go into the objective of the game. That way they know like what they're actually trying to do. Because I've noticed like sometimes, even I'll do it by accident where I'll just say, so these are all the mechanisms of the game, but then people get confused like, okay, but like, why would I be doing any of these things? So I want to start off with the objective, and then I just let them know how the game ends, and that's like the three things I use to start off the game. Or start off my explanation.
Have you ever done like demoing like that for any specific games, like at a convention or anything like that? I
haven't. I actually haven't been to all that many conventions.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I've only been to PAX Unplugged twice. I was hoping to go to Dice Tower East, but who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't quite get into the hobby all that long ago. It was only a few years ago when I really like went deep into the hobby and started getting like games and playing them. I've been watching the Dice Tower for years, for the past like 10 years, but I never actually played the games. I just watched about them.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, so just a couple of years ago, I was like, you know what, I really want to go to a convention. They seem like a lot of fun. I finally have the money to do it.
Yeah.
So I went to PAX Unplugged for 2 years in a row.
Oh, that's awesome. Is there a specific game that made you, like, you saw a video about it, or, like, it was, like, your on-ramp to the board gaming hobby?
I don't know if it was a specific game. I remember when I started watching the Dice Out, I just came across Tom's top 100 games of all time, and I was amazed. I was like, whoa, there's like 100 of these board games. And then I found out there's way more than that. So, and I kind of just went down the rabbit hole with that. But my first game that I bought that I made the conscious decision that, yes, I'm going to get into this hobby and play all these games was Shadows over Camelot, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, so and I've been loving that game, and my group still loves it. We still play it. And, yeah, that was the game, I think, that really sparked it. But before that was, I just had two hobby games, which was Pandemic and Battlestar Galactica, the board game.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, both of which I really, really loved, and I guess all of that together kind of put me on this path.
I think that's awesome because I feel like cooperative games for me as well is really what helped push me into board gaming and make me really excited about tabletop games.
Yeah, my group, we love co-ops. We gravitate towards them. Probably like half our collection is cooperative board games or trader games. We love trader games too, social deduction stuff.
Gotcha. So I just think that they're a lot more accessible, especially when you talk about it from teaching games. It's like if you can teach a game that we're all going to be working together the whole time, it just makes it a lot simpler to be able to like not be trying to like mess somebody up too much, which sometimes that can happen in those hidden trader games.
Yeah, no, for sure. The co-ops are usually the easiest to teach. That's probably how I started up on all of this craziness. Was just teaching co-op games. I was usually the one who knew the rules for things, and a lot of my collection at the beginning was either social deduction or co-ops. So it made it a little bit easier to get into that, and then I started branching out to competitive games more because I was starting to get a little tired. I wanted to like beat people up now. And, so I started to learn how to teach those games as well.
I think it's funny, like, when you're playing one of those, like, hidden trader games, and you're, like, the person who's teaching the game, and you, like, look at your card, and it's like, oh, I'm a Cylon. This is going to be bad for everybody else. It's almost like, should I reshuffle? Maybe I should try to give them the best chance they have, but they're probably not going to make it.
Well, luckily for them, I'm pretty terrible at board games. So it could be the very first time I could be the trader and still lose. It's okay. It doesn't matter. I apparently also give off the vibe that I'm the trader. Whether or not I'm the trader or not, people are always like, Melissa's definitely the trader. It's like, it's not me no matter what I'm doing. But then, of course it is me at some point, and it's like, damn it.
Yeah, I normally can get away with it pretty good, but I had one friend in my game group who, like, anytime he was a trader in anything, I could just look at him and ask him, and I immediately knew it was, like, bad. I was like, Matt, are you the trader? And he's just like, I'm like, you're supposed to at least try to act like you're not. Like, come on.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what I do. I think because somehow I'm the trader so often in these games, they just automatically assume I am the trader, and that's that. So it is what it is.
If you had, like, a favorite game or, like, a favorite kind of game, what would they be?
A favorite kind. So I think my favorite types of games are ones with a sandboxy feel to them, where I could kind of just do what I want, be who I want in these games, and have some, of course, level of complexity, some sort of depth and strategy. I really like that. I probably lean towards, I think, like thematic strategic games. A lot of times I like hybrid games, like the ones that are sort of Eurogame-ish, but then also have that Ameritrash nature to them. For example, I love Caverna. I actually just recorded something about for Board Game Breakfast on Caverna, so I'm in that mindset. But I do really like those games. I like even things like Twilight Imperium, where, again, I get to be this race, but I could conquer whichever way I want. I could go for the objectives whichever way I want. And even just straight off the bat, like, picking your race is part of, like, me being whoever I want. It's like, okay, which one of these 17 races do I want to be today? So I like that kind of stuff.
I think it's funny seeing a lot of your segments. I'm like, oh man, I feel like I have a very similar taste in games to you, as far as like thematic games that you can like be a thing and actually do a thing in a game, but also like strategy as well. It's not just all completely random.
Yeah, for sure. Before being on the Dice Tower, I'd watch your stuff, and I was like, this dude's like my kindred spirit. Everything you said, I was like, yes, I love that too. So, and then when I first came onto Board Game Breakfast, especially earlier on, I was very like jumpy. So people were comparing me to you, and I was like, yeah, because he's my kindred spirit. So
listen, there's nothing wrong with being excited about board games, even though I used to get no end of like garbage in the comments, which that's calmed down. I guess I do more videos sitting down now, and it makes it harder to jump around, but like, I've even had people come up to me at Gen Con and be like, hey, I like your content, but you need to stay in still. And I'm just like, come on, man. What's going on?
Yeah, come on. Yeah, I'm totally fine with it. I loved that. I was like, yeah, that's right. Bring energy to it.
So your segment on Board Game Breakfast is all about comparing a video game to a board game. So video games are like a big part of, like, the game. What am I trying to say? Like, do video games influence the board games you like?
It's possible. I haven't quite thought of that. I've been playing video games much longer than I've been playing hobby board games. So I've just always I've liked gaming, forever.
Yeah.
So I guess in terms of if it's influenced my board game taste, it might have, because I do go more towards like thematic games, and I think video games is very difficult to compare to a Euro game. And I've been trying, but I can't like quite come up with a comparison. So I'm sure, yeah, because like things like I said, TI4, even like Battlestar Galactica and all that stuff, it all feels sort of video game-ish. But then I do like some of those drier Euro games. Like I like Orléans and like World's Fair, even a lighter one. So I don't really know where that comes from, but I don't know. I guess partially yes, partially no, maybe.
What are like some of your favorite video games?
Probably. So I've been really liking League of Legends, Overwatch. I've been getting really into Conan Exiles lately, so that's fun. That's a sandbox sort of game, although some of the stuff in there is kind of like questionable in terms of morals, but it is a barbaric Conan style game. So, but I like the sandbox stuff, just like I like the sandbox stuff in board games, and I also like Rocket League, things like that. So I like competitive games, but I also love story-driven games, and my friends and I have been sort of like on a search to find like a really great cooperative story-driven video game, and I feel like the board game world has this pretty much covered. Like they're doing a way better job at it than the video game industry is, in my opinion. There's no video games out there that I'm really like, yeah, this is a great co-op story-driven game. It's really just left to the board games for that. So
yeah, they normally end up being like single player. Like if they could make those and have them be like a bigger multiplayer experience, I feel like that could really take off. But
yeah, for sure, I think so too.
Even the games that you would think would be that sort of thing, like Fallout, who has like an amazing story, they make a multiplayer game of it and just take all of the story part that everybody loves out of it. It's like, wait, what? And that's why people were so upset about that game.
Yeah, I don't get it either. Even things like Skyrim, I know they came on with like Skyrim Online where you could play the multiplayer, but I also heard that it's like behind paywalls and all this stuff. But if they would have just taken just a regular game of Skyrim and you could have gone through Skyrim with your friends, going through all those different stories and everything, that would have been so cool. But I don't know.
I guess the main thing would be World of Warcraft, but then you'd be stuck in that forever. So
exactly, yes. Subscription fees, all that stuff, nonsense.
Yeah, I really wish there were more sandbox-style board games. I mean, there's a few that give you a little bit of the feel, but like I would love for designers to come out with more games that let you be a character and interact with a board game like kind of however you want. I don't know, I really enjoy Xayah, and I really enjoy Western Legends. I would love to see more games have that sort of run around and do whatever you want sort of feel.
Yeah, no, I love Xayah and Western Legends. I like Xayah a little bit more, but for sure, I wish there were more games like that. I feel like they're kind of starting because they're starting to do like the whole open world aspect, like Seventh Continent has that open world feel. I know Sleeping Gods is supposed to have that when it comes out, and I backed out. I'm very excited for it. So in that way, it's cool that they're starting to open up the board game world to like these open world experiences. And it'd be really cool if they really start to amp up the sandbox feel of all these things.
Oh, for sure. Do you do a lot of like backing of Kickstarters and things like that?
I don't. I'm pretty cautious with Kickstarter stuff. I'm also pretty cautious with how much I'm spending on games. I'm trying to, calm down on it a little bit. But I have backed a couple of things. One thing that just came in, it was my first backed Kickstarter, actually, which was the Silver River
nice.
Board game. Yeah, and I played through it once so far, and the gameplay I thought was really awesome. I liked it a lot. And it also actually kind of gave that sandboxy sort of feel along with that 4X vibe to it, which was cool, and all done in like 2 hours, which kind of amazed me. I was like, wow, this game's pretty cool. the component quality was I was a little annoyed about, but overall the game itself was very, very cool, and I'm happy that I backed it, and it felt like a legitimate backing of a project that wouldn't have normally been able to come into existence if it wasn't for Kickstarter. So I felt good about it.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Well, yeah, I played that, but I think when we played, the designer was like, oh, you guys didn't play all the rules right, but the publisher was there. But the cool thing about that one is I think you get to, like, fight monsters and stuff, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. And he even, because I watched that live play, he sort of fixed some of the stuff with the monsters to make it a little more difficult to actually beat them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so, I don't know. My first play was cool. Good first impression, I guess.
Have you ever played Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea?
I have. I actually just played it for the first time either last week or 2 weeks ago. I want to play it again, and I also really, really liked that game a lot. Yeah, that's another like 4X that could be played in like 2 hours, which is cool. But with the fantasy theme, and I love fantasy, I'd say probably I like fantasy more than sci-fi, but I also really like space. So there's that. But Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea was super awesome and very, very cool. I liked a lot of the aspects, even like the building of your little fortress and all that. I got absolutely destroyed in the game, but it was fun.
It's such an interesting game. It's so funny because I played that game probably... The publisher says I played it more than anybody, which I'm like, you're the publisher. You probably shouldn't say that. Yeah. But you should say your design and development team played it more than I did, at least. But I played it a bunch, and it's just so interesting. Like, I play so many times, and just depending on the group of people I play it with and the faction I pick, the game feels very different each time I play it. And sometimes it's like a game with not much combat in it, and sometimes you just sit around the table with people that are just warmongers, and they attack you relentlessly. And I don't know. It's fun. It's fun.
It is fun. I like it a lot. I think it's cool. It's also cool that it doesn't use dice. I guess it's also cool.
It's very deterministic overall. The only actual randomness in the game is like the tokens out on the board. So when you're going to those tokens, and then the order of the spells you get out, but you can kind of mitigate that by drawing through the spell deck faster. But it's kind of interesting.
Right. I actually really like the explore mechanism in the game because it actually feels like then the 4X, because I feel like sometimes the 4X genre, they leave out the exploration part a little bit, but that one actually, it brings it to light. And same thing even with Silver River, it brings the exploration to light, but Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is very, very cool.
I think it's so funny because all of those have like different things that they do, and when I've played it with the publisher at Gen Con, they like flip over a token, they're like, okay, what does this do? They try to pull out the rulebook, I'm like, oh, it does that, and they're like, sure, Roy, and they look at the rulebook and they're like, oh yeah, it does what Roy said. But when I'm teaching that game specifically, that's one of the games, speaking of teaching games, that I've gotten extremely good at teaching. And it's not that simple of a game, but there's very much like I go through a process of explaining all the different things and the different parts. But it's just interesting, like being able to like hone and master like the teaching skill on a specific game when you've played it enough times.
Yeah, it's fun. I like it. Like I said, it's kind of like a puzzle for me that I like to figure out. And maybe I'll come out with a Teach the Teach for Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea whenever I play that some more and really get it down.
Oh, nice.
Because, I taught it for the first time because none of us had played it. So I watched Ronnie Smith's How to Play, and then I kind of was looking at the rule book, and then I was teaching it, which is always difficult. But
oh, for sure.
So hopefully I can, teach it better and put out a video on it.
Is there a video game that you would love to see emulated into a board game? I know you said there was story mechanics you wish were in video games. Is there anything the other way that you'd love to see?
So like a board game based off the video game?
Or just one that mirrors more of a style of a specific genre of game, or like it's like, oh man, they haven't done this style of video game good in a board game yet. That sort of thing.
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting one. I guess. Well, there was so at first, if you would have asked me this like a couple years ago, I would have probably said like the open world feel. But now they're starting to do that, which is very cool. And I think there's still some honing that could go into that and make it feel even more like a living, breathing world, as opposed to. So there's some campaign games that feel like even though there's diverging paths, it doesn't quite feel like it's living. Although I think the closest thing is, to that has been Chronicles of Crime, where it kind of starts to, it really feels like, oh wow, these characters kind of exist. They have personalities, and they're like, they might be there one day, and then the next day they're not there. You know, they're walking around, they're living their lives, which is cool. So I think that if they could really start to amp up the feeling of like, yes, this world is living, because some video games can do that. Like, I feel like Skyrim kind of feels like that, where it's sort of living. Undertale even kind of felt like a living, breathing world, that game. So if they could come out with that kind of stuff, that'd be really, really cool. And I kind of think that we're close to it.
Yeah, I love the fact that, I don't know, I like app integration in board games. You're speaking of Chronicles of Crime. And I think that's one thing that can kind of help make a board game that's just these cardboard pieces and bits feel like it can come to life a little bit more. I'd love to see more board games that have like an app integration that allows you to have like NPC dialogue or something like that. It'd be cool. I love those story games so much that it'd be cool to have something like Near and Far, but there's an app that does all the multiple choices, and depending on what you pick here can affect what happens over here. You know, that'd be crazy.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love apps in board games. I think they add a really cool element and an interesting one, and a whole new dynamic, which is cool. And I argue even that it actually even brings about more social experiences, because now you don't have to worry about the fiddliness possibly of the game, like upkeep and all that, and like, oh, okay, this monster goes down this many points, whatever it is. It's like, no, the app will just take care of that, and we could focus on like talking about what's going on in the game and what we should do and all those things.
I actually got a chance to play on the Tabaroo thing or whatever that Simon was working on for their like zombie side. I haven't heard about that in a while, so I'm not sure if it's still in the works or not, but it was really cool because it basically had like a board that was connected to an iPad that had like RFIDs and everything, and the app would know where you are, but it also had dice that you rolled, and the app would know exactly what the dice rolled. So it like took basically everything, every bit of fiddliness out of Zombicide ever, but then added a lot of story in it too, because you'd walk into a certain room and the iPad would show you like a cutscene, and it was just crazy. And like you'd roll the dice and be like, you killed 2 zombies, and you look at the dice, it's like, cool, well, I guess I have 2 hits, and I have this weapon, and that means, okay, I killed 2 zombies. But it's like, the app immediately told you. You didn't even have to necessarily look at the dice to know. It already knew what had happened. So it's like, even if there was complicated math, it could immediately tell you what happened on different stuff like that, which was super interesting. And I thought that it would be like, oh, it's going to be this whole digital thing, you're going to be worrying about all that stuff. But it actually took more of the work out of it, and it was just more about, like, hacking and slashing these zombies and grabbing the chainsaw and running down the hall and like wrecking all the bad guys and high-fiving each other around the table. It's also cool because they had like an app thing where you could like trade with each other, because everybody like had their phone, and you could like, okay, I'm going to trade you this card and trade you that card or whatever. It was really interesting, and I wish I had heard, would continue to hear more about it, but it'll be interesting because that's such a big production on how long it would take something like that to get to the market, and then if it would continue to be supported, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, I remember when they were first announcing that this was going to come to be, and I was like, whoa, this sounds so cool. And then I haven't heard anything since. So I wasn't sure what was going on with that, or if it like fell through or whatever, but I hope it didn't. It sounded like something really cool, and I was like, wow, this could be like the future of board gaming, or at least like for some of the board games, it could be really, really interesting and fascinating. But like you said, yeah, it would take out so much of the upkeep stuff that people, complain about, and you could just get right to gaming. I wonder if even it would help in terms of like setting up legitimate tutorials for board games.
For sure.
You know, that way you don't have to read a rule book anymore.
For sure.
So that'd be cool.
Yeah, I feel like rule books themselves are probably one of the biggest barriers to people that aren't in the hobby, like getting into the hobby. It's like, oh, that looks cool, but I'm not going to read through pages and pages of rule books to try to understand what this is. So that's why it's cool when people like Rodney Smith have tutorials, or you put together a thing of like, oh, well, you figured out the game. Like, this is how you can help teach people and get people into it, you know?
Right, yeah, no, for sure. I think it's almost an enemy of gaming, rule books, especially bad ones, but like just rule books in general, it bogs it down. And then before you could even play, you have to like sit there and read a manual. It's crazy. But it's amazing that we actually do that.
Oh, for sure. I normally, when I try to get a game to the table, I try to like have the game known so well that I don't have to use a rule book and only use it if it's like, okay, well, how many cards do we draw at the beginning? You know, that sort of thing. But like, I hate to like, Tom is extremely, extremely good at just like putting a game on the table and reading through the rule book and teaching the game. I'm not necessarily as good at that. Like, I like to know the game so that people have a better experience at it, because I don't want to be like, all right, well, how do we do this? All right, well, how do we do that? I don't know. I've been in those situations and it's not the best, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't like it either. I'm not one to like plop it down and then like start reading the rule book there and then like figuring it out. I'm not good at it, and I want to get right into it. So usually I'll try to learn the game beforehand. I might even like play a couple of rounds just by myself to see like, do I understand everything? And then I'll get it to the table, have other people come around and teach the game. It's usually still the first round of it. If I haven't quite played it before, still kind of gets a little iffy. But after that, it's like, okay, I get it now, and now I could go ahead and teach this for real.
Nice. So what made you decide you wanted to like start creating board game media?
So it's something that I had always kind of wanted to do, but felt like I couldn't for some reason. Like, oh no, that's what other people do. Like, I'm not special enough for that or something. Some weird stuff. But when I was just graduating from grad school last summer, and I saw on Board Game Geek, actually, Dice Tower was looking for contributors for Dice Tower News to write for the Dice Tower News. And that's actually how I started. I was like, you know what, why not? Let me, start doing something for it, because I like talking about board games.
Yeah.
I would like writing about it and whatnot. So I started doing that, and I wrote for a while. Up until pretty recently, I stopped because I started doing a whole bunch of other content stuff. But then Tom on Board Game Breakfast was like, hey, if anybody wants to be a contributor, let me know. I was like, all right, you know what? Let me just try it. So I sent him my video, not really expecting anything. But then he said, yeah, sure. I was like, okay, cool. So then all of a sudden I'm on Board Game Breakfast, and I was like, whoa, this is so awesome, because I've been watching the Dice Tower for so long. So then getting to be on Board Game Breakfast was really, really cool for me. And then it kind of just took off from there. Like I said, I met Tom then at PAX Unplugged this year, and he opened up another opportunity for me, saying, like, if you have any other ideas, let me know. And so I took that opportunity and I went with it. And then I said to my brother, both of us like talking about board games. Why don't we start up a podcast? So then I'm doing a podcast called Room 51. So we've been doing that. We actually just moved to YouTube as well, doing our top. Yeah, we just released the first segment of our top 51 board games, or our best board games of all time, or whatever. And I don't know, I've just been loving it. I love doing it, and I was originally a theater major in college as an undergrad, so I was going to be an actress. And I started doing that. I was in a couple of commercials, and then I was like, you know what? This isn't for me. It's making me like way too anxious. It's not even fun anymore. Let me just chill out. And then I wound up going to grad school for psychology. I'm a mental health counselor by day, and but I still wanted to do like the whole film thing, and I loved board games, and I was like, it would be so cool to do content creation. And then finally I was like, yeah, let's just try it. Let's just do it. Send the email to Tom, see what he says. And then for whatever reason, he was like, yeah. And he just keeps saying yes to me. So I'm like, okay.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always fun to have, like, find a niche to be able to create content for and be able to talk about things you're passionate about.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love talking about it. It's probably the topic that I get the most excited about. and I kind of don't stop talking about it, so I have to consciously be aware of what I'm doing because people will get bored who aren't in the hobby. So I'm like, okay, I gotta find some other way to talk about it.
Yeah. I wonder what like we could do to help grow even more people, because it always seems like the demographic for board games in general are like out of college, like doing other stuff. Like, we spend so much time in front of screens. It's like, oh man, it'd be really cool to have human interaction face to face. What's these board games? These are cool. You know, it'd be interesting to see like if there's other ways to help lower barriers so that all sorts of different people that maybe didn't like think about trying board games would see how exciting they are.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I started playing board games when I was in high school, hobby board games, because I got BSG and all that when I was in high school.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
How did you end up finding it? Was it just a random thing, or you saw a video about it and were like, oh, cool?
So for Battlestar Galactica, I don't even remember quite how I found it. I think I just like randomly saw it at maybe a Barnes & Noble or something.
Oh, crazy.
And I had watched the TV show, and I loved that show so much.
Oh,
So
nice.
when I saw the board game, I didn't look at reviews because I didn't quite know that really existed. And I was just like, cool, you know, it's based on the show. Let me get it. And then it turned out to be really good.
Which is rare, which is awesome, because there's so many games based on IPs that, like, if somebody did the same thing you did, I don't know about board games, let me get this thing based off an IP. And good thing, like, with Prospero Hall, those games are a lot lighter, but at least there's, like, more games that are at least decent games that are based on these IPs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got very, very lucky with that it... Although, for it being, like, one of my first ones, that's a pretty, like, complicated game. So
it is
I don't
not
know.
that simple.
Yeah, I don't know how I got it to the table. Yeah, I don't remember. I think I just, like, diligently read those rules until I knew it. And then, I don't know, we all got into playing it. The most we'd ever played before that was, like, Monopoly, chess, all that stuff. And then I was personally looking for something more. What I actually got into first was Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so because I was looking for a board game that had more to it than just like Monopoly, right? And I kept seeing things like on television about, you would see like a group of friends playing this really cool board game, and I was like, man, if only board games like that actually existed, because I didn't know. And when I was looking it up, Dungeons and Dragons kept coming up, like Adventure, Sandbox, like all those things that I like. So that's really how it all started, and then I got really into just board gaming rather than RPG tabletop stuff.
What kind of character would you normally play in a role-playing game? Do you have a certain archetype that you like?
Typically, I would used to play a rogue-like character who would just like sneak around and, be like
Melissa
kind of
sneaky.
unaligned. Yeah. Yeah, it was like the unaligned character who like you didn't quite know if like they were good or bad. And
all that RPGing in that helped you out in all these trader games.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. But just recently I started playing a bard because I just wanted to be silly. And I thought it'd be funny and fun and cool. So we have a campaign going on that my brother is running. So although there's been a pause put on it just because one of our campaign members went away to college, although he's back now, so we'll see. Who knows?
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I grew up playing role-playing games, and I think there's like a strong crossover in between people that play role-playing games and enjoy those and people that like really thematic board games that kind of tries to give you a lot of that experience. I always talk to the people that are like, I play Euro games strictly and economic games, and I'm like, but have you ever played D&D? And it's normally like, no. And I'm like, that's what's wrong with you. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, for sure. I guess that is something that like I'm looking for in these board games, like anything that could come super close to what D&D can accomplish without having that preparation beforehand for the DM or the players. Yeah, and I think that's even why I got into board gaming in particular, just because I don't have the time to like, or the energy to create a whole world like that. Although I loved it because I used to DM and I loved doing it, but then I take such long breaks because I am the slowest creative person ever. So there goes that. But yeah.
I used to always love it because, like, I would create worlds and do all these stuff, and I'd, like, set all these hooks for things, and it always, like, the thing about D&D, and the reason that I'm so passionate about board games now, is the fact that, like, in D&D, you have to have the same group of people, and you have to have it regularly, and so that everybody remembers what's going on, and you have to be consistent with it to make it work properly. And we always said, hey, you miss one game night of D&D, and it's fine. If you miss the second one, like the monthly or weekly schedule or whatever, then like the whole campaign's shot and you have to basically start over. But it's like I had so many awesome campaigns and like things that would like be unfolded that never ended up happening. You know, it's like, oh man, I set all these things up and I set all this story and we got like a quarter of the way through it and then it all fell apart and nobody came back to game night and I had to start a completely new campaign, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. That is definitely one of the things where it's like, yes, okay, I have to get the same group back to get together again and again. But it's funny because I also then still gravitate towards like the campaign board games that are coming out where you need kind of the same thing.
It's still kind of hard to pull off.
Yeah, it's like, wow, something about these things, they just suck me in. And I know it will take me forever to finish these because there's no way I'm getting the same group every week or whatever for this. So, but I do it anyway, and I only get like a quarter or halfway through, and I go on to the next campaign game because I just love them.
I think that's the one thing that I really do like about most board games is the fact that like with D&D or a lot of other things, you have to like do all this prep work and do all these things. And most board games, you can be like, put it on the table, I'll teach you how to play. It doesn't matter who you are. Like you can come in and play, and we can kind of all be on the same playing field, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a huge thing for me. I mean, the worst thing about a board game is like setup time. If you have like a good setup time, perfect, great. I'm hooked. If you have a bad setup time, I will still play your game, but I won't be as happy about it.
Yeah, I always had those long setup time games. I would always like have them set up and then invite people over. Like the game was set up the night before. Oh man, I don't know if you ever played Mansions of Madness First Edition, but oh my goodness, the setup time on that game was ridiculous, and everything had to be in exactly the right place, because there would be clues that say, hey, go to that room. Well, if they get to that room and the next clue doesn't point to the correct room, you've ruined the whole game, you know?
Oh no, so, I haven't played that one, yeah.
Have you played the second edition where they like fixed everything and made it app stuff?
No, I have. That's one that I've been wanting to get. I wound up getting Journeys in Middle
Oh
Earth. Yeah, because I heard that it's like sort of similar in some ways, but
and campaign.
Yes. I do want to give Mansions of Madness, especially because it doesn't quite have the campaign that's going on. You just play the scenario, from what I understand. And I like the Cthulhu theme. I like horror stuff, so. Yeah, I definitely still want to get that one, but I just like Lord of the Rings more, so I wound up getting that first. But
me as well.
Yeah, I do know that Mansions of Madness second edition cleared up a lot of stuff from the first edition.
Oh yeah, it basically feels like Lord of the Rings, but it's all, of course, like one-shots, and it's a lot more puzzly than Lord of the Rings is. Like, it's very much like, oh, you're going to solve this and do this, and you're trying to like figure out what's going on. It's like an extremely thematic escape room where you're actually walking around the board and doing stuff. And that's one game, like these apps and games can make it so that like it's so simple to teach. Because my wife really enjoys Mansions of Madness and Chronicles of Crime, basically because it's like you set up the game and it's like, okay, now let's play. You know, there's not a whole lot of teaching because it's like, okay, you have a character that can do 2 actions, like this is the list of actions you can do. We don't know what we're really doing yet. Let's just walk around and talk to people and explore, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree. Even for Journeys in Middle Earth, that's the same way. You're only doing like a couple of different things, and the app takes care of everything else, which is awesome because that game could have definitely been something where it's like very rules heavy if it wasn't for the app. So, it just hits the table more because of it, which is awesome.
Man, I wish my Journeys of Middle Earth would hit the table more. So, I really enjoy the game, and I played it a bit solo, but I mean, I feel like that's a game that I actually want to enjoy with other people as opposed to playing it solo. I feel the same way about Mansions. Like, I played Mansions solo, but like I don't want to waste the experience of uncovering things and uncovering mysteries by myself. You know, I want to enjoy that with somebody else.
Yeah, no, I understand that. That's true. I haven't played it solo all that much, Journeys. I played it a little bit and I did really enjoy it, but you're right. I had the same feeling of like, no, I want to play with somebody else, and like, especially because like Lord of the Rings is all about like camaraderie and everything.
Oh, right.
So
it's like I can have camaraderie with my Gimli and my Legolas going to fight things. Just me.
Yes, exactly.
Camaraderie with
I
myself.
need another person. Yeah.
Do you play any other solo games or anything like that much? Or do you normally just turn to video games when that happens?
I play solo board games. I'll play video games, solo board games. I don't play solo board games as much as I want to because it just takes more time to do. Like, if I feel like I don't have as much time, I'll just like turn on a video game because it's right there. I don't have to set it up or anything.
Right.
But there are solo games that I do really like. Like, I've been really enjoying Marvel Champions solo. That's been a lot of fun, and I've played Arkham
Same
Horror.
tasting games. No, I'm just kidding.
I've been playing Arkham Horror LCG solo, which is also a lot of fun. But I feel like Marvel Champions. Yes, I saw that on your Twitter. But yeah, I feel like Marvel Champions just hits the table a little bit easier for me because there's less setup.
And there's no campaign currently. I think they're coming out with one, but that's still going to be optional. So.
Right, and I am excited for the campaign, for sure. But for some reason, Arkham Horror LCG, I feel like there's such big setup for some reason because I have to like get each of the encounter sets and then like put those together and all that stuff. It just takes a little bit longer. I like Lord of the Rings LCG as well. I clearly like LCGs. But yeah, there's a couple of solos. I play like Onirum on my phone a lot. But yeah, so, and it's something that I've been wanting to get more into. Like, I would like to get Nemo's War, second edition, because that seems like a meatier solo game, even though I just said, you know, for those kind of things, I'll just turn on a video game. But I do want, like, the meatier solo board game, so. Yeah.
Did you ever do any Magic the Gathering at all, or?
I did. So, I at first, when I was, like, 11, I played Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot. And then,
nice!
Yeah.
My son is obsessed with like the show Yu-Gi-Oh! He's only 7, so he can't actually play the game or play. Okay. We play a little bit of Pokemon, but he is obsessed with just like slamming down. I remember liking the cartoon when I was a kid too. So
yeah, I loved the cartoon and the movie that came out and all that stuff. But I remember my friends, one of my friends showing me Magic the Gathering because their older brother played it, and I don't have an older brother, so. They didn't show me Magic the Gathering or anything, and I was just going along with Yu-Gi-Oh! Because that's what all the other kids in my class were doing. But then, a little bit later, my brother got really into Magic, and I already kind of remembered how to play it. So I'd play it with him, and I really liked it. But he got really into, like, even going into tournaments and all that stuff. Not that he was good or anything, but he got super into, like, building this great deck and, like, spending a whole bunch of money on it, and I wasn't into that. But I was into, like, making my own little, like, homebrew decks, but then they would always get crushed by the stuff that he would find online, and I was like, okay, this is whack, so...
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but then...
It's all fun and games until somebody has to be a try-hard and go buy the good cards.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, forget it. So I've really been into, like, Dice Masters and Keyforge. I've been liking that stuff a lot, yeah. So I definitely like the CCG, LCG, all that kind of stuff.
If you had like a color in Magic, what would have been like your favorite?
My favorite color in Magic? Probably green, but I felt like green was never all that powerful, but I just loved being able to place a whole bunch of creatures onto the field and say, go, you know?
Yeah.
But then they would all get destroyed. But I don't know, I really liked that. And I even play like Commander. Right now, that's probably my favorite way to play Magic. And I've been playing, I forgot the name of the commander, but it's green and blue, and it pretty much just like, it just beefs up my creatures that come out onto the field. They start out like all puny, and then I get to keep putting like counters on them, and I like that. I like seeing like monsters evolve into something really huge and powerful. So I guess green would be my favorite.
Yeah, I always really wanted to play more Commander. And when I used to play back in the day, Commander was an extremely casual thing. And like I played it some here at the Cool Stuff in the area, and everybody in Commander was tryhards, and I was like, why? This game is. I want to play Magic casually. Like it's it's a fun game to play casual, but like when people like work really hard to spend a ton of money on the deck and like must win, it's like, oh man, it's not fun anymore. You know?
Yeah, exactly. It's not. I'm not even playing the same game as you. I'm not even sure if I am playing a game anymore with you.
Yeah, and I mean, I can normally do pretty good in those games. Like I used to play CCGs all the time, and I can do decent. But I like it more when it's just for fun. Yeah. Have you ever done like drafts or like pre-releases or anything like that?
No, definitely not. That would cause way too much anxiety for me. I'm not about it.
Cube is pretty fun though. Like a cube is where they put a whole bunch of cards together, and then you just draft out of the cards that are put together. But it's more casual. We used to do that all the time at Target for work. We were working, yeah. It would be like, first break, draft the cards. Lunch, play 2 games with the decks that we drafted with. Second break, play another game with the decks we drafted. I probably spent way too much time on the clock at Target playing Magic the Gathering. But there were a lot of managers doing it too, so it's I guess it's okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that's totally okay.
Target corporate probably wouldn't be that happy, but we played Magic a bunch, so...
Yeah. For the pre-release and tournament stuff, I typically even when going to conventions, I typically just play with my friends and whatnot because I am a painfully shy, introverted person. So that stuff freaks me out. Like when people are like, "You want to play a game?" I'm like, "Okay," and inside I'm like freaking out. So I tend to just like play with my friends, have it really like chill and everything. So yeah, tournament life not for me.
Now you're going to go to like a convention, everybody's be like, that's the Melissa Makak. Oh my goodness.
No.
And they're going to be like, teach us the games. You're so good at teaching now.
No, I would throw up. Yeah, no, I've actually thought of that if I was like asked to do like, to like teach a game, like one of those learn and play stuff. And I don't know if I'd say yes to it because I'd be like, well, now people are expecting me to be good at this. So I don't know if I could do that.
You're like, you have no clue how many cuts and edits are in my stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Yes.
So do you normally like work off of a script that you write for stuff, or do you just kind of like wing it and then edit it and put it all together?
I don't really have a script. I'll lay it out all on the table, and then I'll sort of think like, okay, wait, how do I teach this game? And then I'll sort of try to like remember what I do, and then I'll kind of practice it semi, like, okay, I'll do this and then this or whatever. And then I roll with it, and then I mess it up a lot, and I have to do a lot of retakes, a lot of editing. And then even as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh man, I forgot this. I have to like type that out as like a Klingon thing. But I try my best, and but no, I don't have a script because I tried it for the first video. I did have a script. And it took even longer to do, and I would mess it up even more because I was trying now to remember the script or like read the script as I was like looking at it. I was like, okay, this isn't working. Let me just like be natural and just do whatever I do.
I think that's one of the things that's interesting is people that watch a lot of the content don't realize how much work it takes behind the scenes with like the editing and putting stuff together and all that stuff. Like, it's pretty insane.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's time consuming. It takes a lot of energy to do it. Not to say that I don't love it because I do, but it takes a lot of brain power. So it's kind of a bummer when you see like that comment. I was like, this video was awful. I'm like, well, okay, thank you.
Haters gonna hate. Oh my goodness, that's one of the things that's interesting too is like dealing with interactions with people on the internet. It's like I'm always my philosophy is like, do not engage, do not like, because people are half the time just trolling or who knows.
Yeah, I try to look at the comments because there are nice comments, and I think this is like the counselor in me. I can't just like have somebody say something to me without me like responding to them.
Oh, snap.
But if it's rude or uncalled for or mean or whatever, I'm not gonna respond to that. But like for the nice comments, I want to respond to you because you were being a good person, you're nice, and you liked my content. What I've actually been doing, because I couldn't take it anymore, seeing like the bad comments, so I've been having somebody else like look at my comments for me and just send me like the nice ones, so I could like give them the nice feedback. So
we try to curate stuff too. Like our rules are kind of like, listen, if anybody's ever like being directly mean to anybody, it's like, no, just delete. Like, yeah. I mean, if it's constructive feedback, okay, cool. Yeah, right. I understand. Roy's mic was too hot. I'm sorry. My kids touched the gain volume button, and I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry, but I'll fix it next time. But if it's other things like, I don't know, like personal attacks, it's like these days so many people are getting so uptight, and I really wish people would just think about what they say before they say them on the internet.
I know, yeah, just like chill out. My thing, if you don't like it, just like watch something else.
No, Melissa, you have to teach me exactly how to play the game. The way I want you to teach me how to teach the game.
Yes, exactly. I can't read your mind.
But yeah, it's still fun because there's so many people. I mean, for me, I know you said you get nervous around people like going to the convention and having people come up because there's so many people that are like the silent majority that really enjoy the content that you don't necessarily hear all the time. And then when people come up and are like, oh man, I like this, and oh man, I like that. Like even when at PAX Unplugged, you like came up to me and was like, oh man, I really like your stuff. And I'm like, thanks, I didn't realize you watched it. Like that's fun. It's awesome. So it's cool to have that validation and to, I don't know, I find it really fun when people come up and talk about the stuff and they kind of like know some of the inside jokes or different things like that you talk about on your podcasts or your videos and things like that. And like they're already friends with you and you just get it like an opportunity to become friends with them as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that. There was a couple of moments where people did come up to me at PAX, and I was pretty early on in the board game breakfast thing, so I didn't think anybody was going to say anything to me or like know who I was. So when I
well, if you're standing in the Dice Tower booth, that helps a little bit.
I know, but maybe I was just like, in the neighborhood or something. But yeah, so when a couple of people came up to me, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, thank you. Yeah. I had one person who messaged me like a month later on Instagram who listens to my content, watches me on Dice Tower, I guess, and was saying, yeah, I saw you at PAX, but I was too nervous to come up to you. I was like, dude, like, I was definitely way more nervous than you were, so don't worry about it. But that was interesting too. I was like, wow, like nervous to see like me, I had
somebody at Gen Con like a couple years ago be like, oh my goodness, you're Roy Kennedy. Like, I'm so starstruck right now. I'm like, you realize I'm a dude who talks to a camera in my garage, like, because at the time I was filming everything in my garage in front of board games, and I'm just like, I'm just a random person. Like, please come talk to me. Let's play a game. Let's talk about games. What games are you into?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I'm just chilling in my room. Like on my phone, just like this little tripod with a phone, and I'm just like talking at my phone pretty much. So that's all it is.
It's so fun, and there's so many cool people out there in the industry and people that enjoy board gaming. That's one of the things I really like about board gaming is like, we have to sit around a table and kind of be social. So most people are pretty cool because if they're not cool, they're not really going to have anybody to play games with,
Right, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Definitely. But yeah, definitely. It still freaks me out. But I think I've been getting a little bit better at it. Like with the convention, people have come by to play with us. I've played with like the Brothers Murph, which was very cool for me. And I was starstruck. I was like, whoa, Brothers Murph.
They're so crazy.
Yeah, so playing with them was very, very cool. And then they were gracious enough to even like come onto our podcast with me and my brother, which was very, very cool. And we were like, whoa, we got the Brothers Murray, So, that stuff, it's cool, and getting to meet new people and really kind of like forming friendships with people is really awesome. Though kind of nerve-wracking for me. So,
yeah, if there was a game that you would like play with people or teach to people, what game would you like pick if there was like a random person came up to you and was like, hey, let's play a game? What would be your go-to game to teach and play with people?
Oh wow, good question. I don't know of if I could come up with like a particular game off the top of my head, but it might be something where like we're all sort of doing our own thing, like a roll and write or something, if they're into that, or some sort of like Euro game where you're kind of just like doing your own thing on your own little player board, because I love that stuff too. When I get like my own player board in a board game, I am in love. I'm like, yeah, that's mine. So I'd probably do that, something with maybe not too much interaction, or maybe something like cooperative that's real time, like Fuse. I did that at PAX. Actually, I was taught that game by somebody else, and that was fun because like you couldn't really talk to people because it's all moving too fast and it's co-op, which I like. So yeah, it's probably something like around those lines.
Nice. Yeah, I wish that you get to go to one of the Dice Tower conventions because they're so different. Like it's PAX still has a lot of that like expo stuff, and PAX is really cool because it has a lot of people that are not like board gamers or like primary board gamers, but the Dice Tower cons are just playing games, you know. It's just like the entire thing is just like a giant hall of tables, and it's all people that are just ready to play games, you know. So we have like players wanted signs and teacher wanted signs and things like that, and it's just such a different atmosphere. Because like PAX is very much like if you have a group, you can kind of play with your group of people, you know. But like the Dice Tower cons are very much like who wants to play this game right now? Anybody can play it, or you like can see people with a players wanted signs like, oh man, I'd really like to learn how to play that. Maybe I'll jump into that, you know. It's been so much fun, especially when we have like areas for like the Dice Tower people to be. And it's like, okay, well now I gotta teach cool people, that random people, how to play a game. It's like, oh, what do you guys want to play? Like, want to play Unmatched, or want to play this or that, or want to play Century? It's really fun getting to show people games that you're passionate about.
Yeah, for sure. I was hoping to get to Dice Tower Con. That would have been really, really cool for me and awesome. I was excited for it, and who knows, maybe it'll happen, maybe not. But at least sometime in the future, hopefully I could go. And yeah, that would be cool. It's funny, too, because in terms of like possibly teaching people games like at a convention with a whole like teacher wanted sign or whatever, especially me doing like teach the teach, I get rules wrong all the time when I'm teaching games. It's like an ongoing joke in my gaming group. Like I, without a doubt, will get something wrong when I'm teaching the game, only to find out a little bit later, and I wind up texting everybody like, okay, so like that rule, yeah, that was wrong. So it's also funny. They're like, yeah, you do teach the teach, but you get rules wrong all the time. And it's like, well, whatever. You still had fun, so.
I guess that's the important part, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Have you ever thought about going to something crazy like Gen Con?
I've thought about it. I don't have the money to do something like that.
Yeah.
But I've thought about it. I think that from what I've heard, there's like a lot of...
It is insane.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure like at least once I would like to experience it just to see what it is. It's Gen Con, you know. But from what I've heard, like these other conventions like PAX, like Dice Tower and all that is more focused on playing games, whereas maybe Gen Con isn't quite. It's more about like what's coming out. Although that's fun too.
Oh, it is. I mean, you can demo games and stuff there, and you can see like fresh new games they just announced like an hour ago, you know. That sort of thing is really fun. But like the crowds are insane, and one of my favorite parts about the hobby is like the building relationships with people and getting to meet people, like people that work with the Dice Tower, publishers, designers. It's really cool to talk to all these different people. And like at Gen Con, it's so rushed that like you see your friends or you see people you know and you're like, hi, bye, you know, and because everybody's running, everybody's got things to do and places to be.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a lot of fun. I'm from New York, so like crowds aren't.
You're used
like
to that a bit.
Thing. Yes, I'm definitely used to like people just being very close to me, and crowds are like all over the place here. But so the crowds wouldn't quite faze me, although I might get a little annoyed if I can't get from like point A to point B in an hour. So, but other than that, yeah, it sounds like it's exciting and fun, and I would like to at least once in my life do something like that.
Well, maybe we can make it happen at some point.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Awesome. Well, we are at an hour here, so I guess if people want to learn more about your content, more about what you're doing with your podcast, or where to find you on social media, where can they find all that stuff?
Yeah, so they could find me on Instagram or Twitter at Melissa Makak. You could find our Facebook page called Room 51. Our podcast is on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. And like I said, we're also on YouTube, all called Room 51. So if you want to find me there, that's where to do it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Melissa. If anybody wants to check these out, they are on the Dice Tower channel at 5 p.m. on Mondays. Also, if you want to check out the audio version, you can search for Spaces Between on iTunes. If you just want to have the audio to listen to at work or whenever you can't have YouTube, it'd be awesome to have more people check out the audio version of it as well. And thanks so much for coming, Melissa, and we'll see everybody next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.